Imagine doing everything right. You prepare for the worst, you build your city to the highest standards, you have a response plan that's the envy of the world. Then, the big one hits. And you pass the test with flying colors. A total success story. But what if that wasn't the end? Let's dive into the incredible and kind of tragic story of Christchurch, New Zealand. A story that completely redefines what it means to be resilient. So to really get what happened here, we need a little context. When we talk about earthquakes, outcomes can be wildly different. You've got a place like Haiti on one side, a low-income country with, very few resources and a real lack of building regulations. And on the other side, you have New Zealand, high income, famous for its incredibly strict building codes, and just hyper-prepared for emergencies. It's basically the gold standard for how to survive a major earthquake. See, for New Zealand, this level of preparedness, it isn't really a choice. It's an absolute necessity. The whole country is sitting right on top of the boundary where the Pacific and Indo-Australian tectonic plates smash into each other. So for them, earthquakes aren't an if, they're a when. The entire nation is literally built for the shake. Okay, and before we go any further, there is one key term you absolutely have to understand: liquefaction. Just picture this. The solid ground beneath your feet suddenly starts acting like a thick, unstable liquid. That's liquefaction. The intense shaking from a quake forces water up from the soil, and the ground just loses all its strength. Buildings can literally sink, roads crack open, and mud can just swamp everything. Keep that word in mind because it is crucial to this story. All right, so the first big test came on September 4th, 2010, just after midnight. The ground started to rumble, and this was no small tremor. This was the big one that everybody had spent decades preparing for. At 4:35 in the morning, a massive 7.1 magnitude quake hit. The epicenter was about 40 kilometers outside of Christchurch, which is a city of around 400,000 people. Now, in a weird twist of fate, the timing could have been a lot worse. Since it was so early, most people were safe at home, asleep in their beds, in houses that were built to handle exactly this kind of disaster. And the power of this quake was just immense. I mean, we're talking about widespread damage to buildings all over the city. That liquefaction we just talked about, it was happening on a massive scale, causing buildings to sink and flooding streets with silt and mud. Roads were ripped to shreds, and about 3/4 of the city lost power. It was a scene of just, total destruction. But then, right in the middle of all that darkness and chaos, the system kicked in. New Zealand's famous preparedness was put to the ultimate test, and this was the moment all that planning, all that engineering was for. The response was just unbelievably fast. Okay, so the quake hits at 4:35 a.m. By 5:05 a.m., that's just 30 minutes later, emergency crews were already on the scene, boots on the ground. And by that same evening, the entire city center was secured with a curfew. It was just a textbook example of a swift, coordinated response. So after all that, after that violent shaking, the widespread destruction, the chaos, the number of people who died as a direct result of this massive 7.1 earthquake was 0. Not a single person. It's just incredible. The building codes, the emergency plans, all of it worked perfectly. It was an absolute triumph, a case study for the entire world on how you survive a major disaster. You'd think the story ends there, right? A happy ending, a testament to resilience. But the ground beneath Christchurch wasn't done yet. Just a few months later, on a busy Tuesday afternoon, the earth started shaking again. And this time, the outcome would be tragically, horribly different. And right here, this is the gut-wrenching paradox of this whole story. The first quake, the big one, was a 7.1 magnitude. The second one was a 6.3, so significantly less powerful, at least on paper. And yet, the stronger quake killed 0 people. The weaker one killed 185. This is the central heartbreaking question, isn't it? It just doesn't make sense at first glance. How could a smaller earthquake be so much more devastating? The system worked flawlessly the first time, so what changed? Well, the answer is that it wasn't just one single thing. It was a lethal combination, a perfect storm of factors. For one, the epicenter was much, much closer to the city, which made the shaking way more violent. The liquefaction was even worse this time around. But the most important factor, the real killer, was cumulative damage. The city wasn't taking this hit with fresh legs. And this is where the story really forces us to stop and rethink what resilience even means. It's not just about being able to take one massive punch. The true test is whether you can get up after being knocked down and then take another punch. To put that into perspective, that first earthquake, the successful one with 0 deaths, had already caused an estimated $4 billion in damage. The city's bones, its infrastructure, were already under this immense invisible stress. Yeah, this quote from the analysis really just hits the nail on the head. Buildings that had made it through the first quake, that everyone thought were safe, were actually compromised. Their structural integrity had been quietly worn away. The second, weaker quake was just the final push for structures that were already standing on the edge of a cliff. The story of Christchurch is just this incredible mix of triumph and tragedy. It proves that being prepared absolutely saves lives. But it's also a really sobering lesson that resilience isn't some finish line you cross. It's a constant process. And it leaves all of us with a pretty heavy question to think about. In a world where crises seem to pile on top of each other, is being ready for just one disaster ever really enough?